Overestimation is the endowment of a person with qualities that they do not actually possess. On a mental level, this manifests itself in the form of seemingly harmless illusions. But on an energetic level, this is excessive potential. Potential is created whenever there is a difference in quantity or quality. Overestimation is just a mental modeling and concentration of certain qualities where they do not actually exist. There are two options here. The first option is when the place is full, that is, there is a specific person who is endowed with qualities unusual for him. To eliminate the resulting heterogeneity, the forces of equilibrium must create a counterweight. For example, a romantic and dreamy young man imagines his beloved as an angel of pure beauty, but in fact, it turns out that she's a down-to-earth person, loves fun, and is not at all willing to share the tragic dreams of a young man in love. In any other case, when a person creates an idol for himself and elevates it to a pedestal, sooner or later the myths are discredited. In this regard, the story of Karl May, author of famous novels about the Wild West and creator of heroes such as Faithful Hand, Winnetou and others, is remarkable. He wrote all the novels in his own name, so that the impression was created that he really participated in all the events and was a truly outstanding and admirable personality. Karl May's works are so vivid and colorful that they create a complete illusion that only a real participant in the events could have written them. Reading his books is like watching a movie, and the plot is so exciting that Karl May was nicknamed the German Dumas. He was originally from Germany. Numerous admirers of Karl May were absolutely sure that he was the famous Westman, the cutting hand as he presented himself in his books. The admirers could not admit any other thoughts. After all, they have found an object of admiration and imitation. And when an idol lives nearby, it causes even more interest. Imagine their surprise when it became known that Karl May had never been to the United States, and some of the works were created by him in prison. The myths were discredited, and the fans turned into enemies. Well, who is to blame? After all, they themselves created an idol and established an attitude of dependence. You are our hero, provided that all this is true. In the second version, when there is no object instead of artificially created illusory qualities, pink dreams and castles in the air appear. The dreamer floats in the clouds, trying to escape from the ugly reality. Thus, he creates excessive potential. The forces of equilibrium, in this case, to destroy castles in the air, will constantly confront the dreamer with harsh reality. Even if such a dreamer can captivate a mass of people with his idea and create a pendulum, utopia is still doomed because excessive potential has arisen from scratch. And the forces of equilibrium will sooner or later stop this pendulum. Another example, when the subject of revaluation exists only ideally. Let's say a woman paints in her imagination the portrait of an ideal husband. The stronger her conviction that he should be like this, the stronger the excess potential created. Well, and it can only be extinguished by a subject with completely opposite qualities. And then one can only ask, and where were my eyes? Conversely, if a woman actively hates drunkenness and rudeness, she seems to fall into a trap and become an alcoholic or rude person herself. A person receives what they actively do not accept because they radiate mental energy with the frequency of their dislike and, in addition, also create excessive potential. Life often brings together completely different people who, apparently, do not fit together at all, so that the balancing forces, which push people with opposite potentials, seek to extinguish them. The effect of the balance of forces is especially pronounced in children, because they are more energetically sensitive than adults and behave naturally. If a child is overly praised, they will immediately begin to misbehave. And if you curry favor with a child, they will despise you, or at the very least, certainly not respect you. If you try with all your might to make a child well-behaved, he will most likely fall into bad company on the street. If you try to turn him into a prodigy, he will lose all interest in learning. And the more actively all kinds of clubs and schools knock him down, the more likely he is to become a gray person. the best principle of upbringing and attitude towards children, and not only, in which excessive potential is not created, is to treat them as guests, which means giving them attention, respect, and freedom of choice, without allowing them to walk all over you. The attitude should be based on the same analogy that you yourself are nothing more than a guest in this world. If you accept the rules of the game and do not rush to extremes, you can choose everything in this world. Positive attitudes of some people towards others are as common as negative ones. In this case, there is a certain balance. There is hatred and there is love. Even a good attitude does not create excessive potential. Potential arises when there is a noticeable bias in the estimation of nominal value. The 0 point on the displacement scale is unconditional love. As you know, unconditional love, in which there is no relationship of dependence, does not create excessive potential. But such love in its pure form is rare. Basically, pure love is complemented by mixtures of possession, dependence, and revaluation. It is difficult to deny the right of possession. It is quite natural and, in general, normal to have an object of love. The first extreme is the desire to possess an object of love that does not belong to you at all and is not even aware of this desire. Of course, you will realize that I am not referring only to the physical aspect of possession. This is a classic case of unrequited love. Unrequited love has always caused a lot of suffering. However, the mechanism here is not as trivial as it might seem. Let's recall the example of flowers again. That's why you love to walk among them and admire them. And it never occurs to you that they torment you with thoughts, but whether they love you. Now try to imagine, what do flowers think of you? Several bad assumptions appear, such as fear, apprehension, dislike, indifference. Why should they love you? Or you have a desire to hold them in your hands, but you can't. They grow in a flower bed or are sold at a high price. That's it. This is no longer love, but an attitude of addiction. And a shadow of negative emotions runs through your mood. So in one place, there is an object of your love. In another place you are, and you want the object to belong to you. That is, you create an energy potential. One might assume that this potential will attract this object to you, just as the wind rushes from an area of high pressure to an area of low pressure. It doesn't matter how. The forces of balance don't care how balance will be achieved. So they may choose a different path. To move the object of your love even further away and neutralize it. That is, break your heart. Moreover, at the slightest setback, you will tend to dramatize the situation more and more. She doesn't love me. So such thoughts will drag you to the line of life, where mutual love is very far away. The stronger your desire for possession, that is, mutual love, the stronger the effect of the balancing forces will be. Of course, if the balancing forces choose a direction that brings you closer to the object of love, then the story will end with a happy ending. The direction of the action of the balancing forces is easy to determine from the very beginning of the onset of love. If the right to possession begins to awaken in you, that is the desire for reciprocity, and something does not work from the very beginning, then you need to drastically change your tactics. That is, to love without demanding a reward. Then the unstable fluctuations of the balancing forces can be stopped and made to work for you. Otherwise, the situation will spiral out of control and it will be almost impossible to change anything. There is only one conclusion. To achieve reciprocity, you just need to love and not try to be loved. In this case, first of all, no excess potential is created, which means that there is no 50% chance that the forces of equilibrium will act against you. Second, if you do not seek reciprocity, you do not have uncontrollable dramatic thoughts of unrequited love, and your radiation does not lead you to the corresponding lifelines. On the contrary, if you simply love without the right of possession, then the radiation parameters satisfy those lifelines where this love is mutual. After all, with mutual love, there is no relationship of dependency either. If you have already done so, you are no longer concerned with the issue of ownership. Imagine how your chances increase just because you give up the right of ownership. And besides, unconditional love is a rarity that in itself arouses great interest and sympathy. Wouldn't it be good for you if someone loved you like that, without pretending anything? The second extreme of the right to property is, of course, jealousy. In this case, the balancing forces also have two options for action. If the object of love already belongs to you, then the first option is to bring them closer together. In fact, some people even like their other half's jealousy to a certain extent. But another variant of the action of the balancing forces boils down to the destruction of what gave rise to jealousy, that is, love itself. Moreover, the stronger the jealousy, the deeper the grave of love. It's like going from enjoying the scent of fresh flowers to making perfume out of them. All of the above applies equally to men and women. But that's not all. We will return to this topic when we look at other concepts of transurfing. It's that simple and complicated at the same time. It's difficult because a person in love loses the ability to reason reasonably, so these recommendations are likely to be wasted. Well, I, in turn, will not be upset about this because I refuse to claim the right to recognize their gratitude.